Welcome to Access Academy. Today, we bring you the Communication Continuum, a new webinar series, which we're going to walk you through three products, which we produce here at APH to support language development for some of the most complex of learners that we serve. Then in coming webinars, we will take a deeper dive into each product. Leanne, we are so happy to have you here with us. Thank you for designing today's learning.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Leanne Grillot, and I am definitely here to introduce you or reintroduce you to the communication continuum, which is also known to some people as the intervention continuum. This is available on federal quota from APH. Now, I'm going to let you know that there is a worksheet. My goal is to keep your hands and your minds busy, so don't be too far from your keyboard. Take the moment to open up a copy of the worksheet to kind of help guide you through this hour. A little bit about me. Yes, my name is Leanne Grillot. I'm the National Director of Outreach Services for the American Printing House for the Blind, but I'm also a teacher of students with visual impairments and an orientation mobility instructor. I've worked in three of our largest states, Florida, New York, and California, serving many, many students. I've been in well over 100 schools and well over 500 classrooms. I stopped counting eventually. As an itinerant teacher, I was out there a lot, working with lots of students. What I would like to share is that these are products that I used with students myself, but I have also talked to many teachers who have used them as well. And these products are ones that I was frequently sharing with other special educators, as well as support providers, so that they can help communicate with some of our most challenging students. So what are we going to learn? Well, our learning objectives are to help give you a taste of these three products. We're going to identify them, these communication tools, for use with individuals with visual and multiple impairments. That doesn't mean they can't just have visual impairments, but I'm really talking about those that have a mixture. We're going to differentiate the three communication tools and paired with various needs of the individuals with visual and multiple impairments. And then we're going to describe techniques for modifying instructional methods of communication for these individuals. So just kind of keep that in mind. And those are your learning objectives for today. Okay, we're going to start by going way back to your college courses. Might be further for some than others. And we're going to talk about Piaget, that Swiss psychologist known for his work on child development. His theories continue to be used widely in school systems throughout the world and in the development of curriculums for students. So I want you to go to your worksheet. All right, make sure you got it. Number one, educators use this knowledge from Piaget to shape their curriculums and activities in order to produce an environment where children can learn through experience. Our goal is to give our students those experiences for learning. Now, let's think about it. The sensory motor stage is Piaget's first stage. This is where a child makes sense of the world using their senses as well as movement. Often we consider this from the ages of birth to 2 years. But for some of our students with more complex needs, sensory motor might last much longer. That's okay. It's still there though. The beginning of this stage are reflexes. And remember, some of our students with complex needs do not lose those reflexes at the same rate as their peers. The later part of the sensory motor stage is the repeating of these new learnings. So to help you remember, that main development during that sensory motor stage is understanding that objects exist and events occur in the world that can also occur independently of one's own actions. Okay, stage two, that pre-operational stage. This is the onset of language and the use of symbols, but there does lack concrete logic. Students who are at this pre-operational stage tend to focus on only one aspect of a situation at one time. And with this, they really have difficulty thinking about more than one aspect of any situation at the same time. They just aren't there yet. According to Piaget, the egocentric student assumes that other people see, hear, feel exactly as they do. How many of you have had a student who had no usable sight, who would grab your hand and say, "Look at this," assuming that you reach and touch things to see them just like they do? When thinking about language, this child's main function of language is to externalize their own thinking rather than to communicate with others. The students have not really grasped the social function of language. Now, while all this is going on, the early preoperational stage is marked by a dramatic increase in the student's use of symbolic function, the actual ability to make one thing stand for another. They might choose to make a iron pretend to be a vacuum cleaner because they are pretending they're making one thing stand for another. Another interesting thing about the preoperational stage is the student's inability to reverse the direction of sequences of events to their starting point. They're going one direction, they're not necessarily able to go back in the other direction. The third stage, concrete operational. This is the beginning to think logically and abstractly. These are students who can go one step further in classification. They understand that there are classes and even subclasses within a group. For instance, flowers can be yellow and flowers can be red. Animals can fly and other animals can swim. They can also understand that actions can be reversed. And I mean this is sort of like a mental gymnastics that happens in your brain. So here your student could figure out that your dog is a husky. They can flip that and say, well, a husky is a dog. And go even further, a dog is an animal. Students in the concrete operational stage can sort things like tallest to shortest, thinnest to widest. This is that third stage. So take a moment, get your fingers exercising, get into the chat, drop in there items from APH that you have used using federal quota dollars to address the needs of your student at that sensory motor stage, that point where they're making sense of the world using senses and movements. What APH items have you used with your students for the sensory motor stage? I know, told you I'm going to keep your fingers busy. I see a Tangle toy. The sensory learning kit, twist, turn, learn, SLK, cause and effect toys, the ribbit ball, SLK, cause and effect toys. So think about those things that were really engaging the senses. Reach and match mat, the fun flower module, textured shapes. Again, I'm just trying to get you to exercise. We have some of our students are in that sensory motor stage. There are many options out there. Okay, pause. Now what I want you to think about is, what about the pre-operational stage? That onset of language and that beginning use of symbols. What items might you be using for that onset of language and the beginning use of symbols, that pre-operational stage? Stacks, calendar boxes, a power switch, objects for a schedule. That's usually the harder one for a lot of people to come up with, so don't worry too much. I'm going to move you on to number 3, concrete operational. This is thinking logically and abstractly, doing classification and sorting. What items might you use for concrete operational students? What items might work on classification, sorting, the plexi shapes, light box with the grids and blocks, light box materials, work trays, real objects, tactile communications system. Okay, I've got your brain thinking. There are many items from APH that are designed for these areas, but we are going to focus on specific ones today. We're talking about sensory motor and pre-operational stages when utilizing these 3 kits. And so that is part of your worksheet if you're paying attention. We're going to focus on sensory motor and pre-operational. So with regard to Piaget's theory, there are 3 kits available for working with these students to build a communication system, and all 3 available with federal quota funds. These products help teach individuals with no formal means of communication methods or effectively abilities to make their wants and needs known. They help nonverbal individuals with visual impairments shift from those haphazard movements and touch to purposeful actions and use of symbols to communicate. For sensory motor, we're going to focus on the sensory learning kit. As a bridge between sensory motor and pre-operational, we're going to work on symbols and meaning. And for pre-operational, we're going to talk about tactile connections. Now, these are special products. These products help fill in the missing concepts that are not a part of the learner's experience, and they need to be added. Barriga and Aaron in 1992 found learners with sensory impairments tend to have more limited experiences than their typical peers. And those limitations result in gaps in the development of concepts about their world. So, what we need to think about is yes, these work well for our students, but there is nothing barring them being used with students who have multiple disabilities and have not been identified as having a visual impairment. These work just fine with them as well. So, these might be a best kept secret in our field. Please feel free to share them because these are not just reserved for our students with visual impairments, but we made sure they're available for our students. So let's first start talking about the sensory learning kit. I have a feeling this is an oldie but a goodie, and many of you might know about it. It builds cognitive skills at the sensory motor stage, that first stage of Piaget's cognitive development. And it's really helping them try to make sense of the world. It uses highly attractive materials. And the people that this is built for are those infants and toddlers with some atypical responses. But you can continue to use it with toddlers who have mild or moderate delays. You can definitely go on and work with students who are preschool, elementary with moderate to severe delays. And you can continue to work with the sensory learning kit for those individuals, whether they're in secondary or even out of school, who have severe and profound delays. If a student needs this for communication, there is not an age level that's smacked on it and you have to follow it. If someone older needs it, use it. So, our question for number 3, the sensory learning kit provides students with the following. It provides them an increased quality of life. Now, who wouldn't want that? It provides them control over people and events. It gives them that control. It also provides anticipation. It gives students the ability to look forward to something. And last but not least, it gives them participation, a shared experience with a caregiver, a teacher, maybe even a peer. those are the things that the sensory learning kit provides. Now, this is often considered classical conditioning, used to establish a cause and effect relationship. So a student might hit a switch accidentally or even with adult assistance, which turns a fan on. The hope is the student will move to hit the switch independently and make the connection that that arm movement caused the fan to turn on. For most children, this happens over a relatively short period of time. But for our students with multiple disabilities, they may stay at this stage for many years. Again, exposure, 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 giving them the opportunity to do this. That main development during the sensory motor stage is that understanding that the objects exist, they can control it, but then things also happen independent of their actions. You don't understand that until you can control some things yourself. And some of our students with more complex needs and possible lack of some body movement are limited in what activities they can cause to happen. Now, sensory motor learners learn about their worlds by sensing it and then acting on it. The motor part is using muscles to respond to that sensory source by exploring it and manipulating it to make it do something. If you're walking along with the worksheet, I want to tell you the very best learning takes place when a sensory source and a muscle response happen together. So think for a minute, drop something in the chat if you can think of an example of a muscle response and a sensory source pairing that you know of. Some type of muscle response from seeing something, a touching response, tasting and then a muscle response, hearing and a muscle response, smelling and a muscle response, or moving and a muscle response. So, what type of moving might you do and have a muscle response for it? What might a child taste and then have what type of muscle response? So I have tapping to a musical beat. They heard music and you start tapping. You smell an orange and you smile. You feel something hot and you move your hand away. You hear daddy's voice and you raise hands in anticipation of being picked up. You taste something and you spit it out. Again, this is sensory motor learning. And it sometimes helps to talk to our caregivers, talk to our paraprofessionals, sometimes even talking to our teachers to pull them way back to this beginning stage of learning. So I want to talk to you for a moment about this stage. This stage of learning, I had a student that we're going to call Katie. I started working with Katie when she was in the 4th grade. And Katie, when I came in, through everything. She was a student that had a significant cognitive disability, though she could walk and move around. She was not confined to a wheelchair. She, for what we could see in reports, she really couldn't see anything. And she did not speak. There were some vocalizations, but no words. And really, truly, if you put something in Katie's hand, she threw it. They tried very hard and had identified a device called a Go Talk that has squares, and they attached items to those squares that said something if you pushed it. For instance, they had toilet tissue attached to one square, and if you pushed it, it said bathroom. They had a piece of a straw attached to another square, and if you pushed it, it said drink. Most of you should probably have an idea of what I'm talking about. As soon as this device was put in her hands, if you did not um, control her holding it, it would be thrown across the room. She would not really explore it much. and there was no association with this. So what I started to do instead is work with her with the sensory learning kit to bring together actions that she had. Again, she was in fourth grade and quite possibly past this stage, but we could not get her to explore anything. She was a student that would sit crisscross applesauce on the floor and loved to rock, rocking so hard that she could possibly hit her head on the floor in front of her. We knew there was some semblance of light because if I put a light box on really bright, she would pause for a moment and kind of tipped her head. So we knew there's something there with sight. Maybe not much, but she liked the light box. It did pause that rocking. I used the sensory learning kit and attached a switch so that if the switch was pushed, the light box went on. If the switch was released, the light box turned off. Putting it anywhere near Katie's hand meant it was thrown, unless I was really holding it and almost forcing her hand to touch it. So that was a no-go. What we did instead is slip it under one of her knees as she was sitting on the floor and rocking. So when she rocked forward, her knee would push down on the switch and turn that light on. The first time we did that, Katie froze with her knee down and that light coming on in her face. Now, sadly, rocking was very important to her. And so she started walking back and forth and back and forth. And what we had to do was go, okay, we got to figure out something. Well, remember, it went on and off. Eventually, Katie was smarter than us, reached her hand down and started pushing the switch down so the light stayed on and she could rock with the light on. But again, she was learning that connection. We were starting to build that connection. There are multiple videos on APH YouTube. Just search SLK and you will be able to see other examples of using the sensory learning kit. Now, out of curiosity, there's a poll on your caseload. On your caseload, how many students are functioning at this sensory motor stage? You might have none. Maybe it's 1 to 4, 5 to 10, more than 10. What's your caseload look like? This was a good chunk of my caseload. Often 25 to 40% of my caseload were students at this stage. Depended on the year. I think you all go through that. While you're doing the poll, I'm just going to show a few pieces of the sensory learning kit. Whole presentation on this at another point in time. The power select switch is set. I have plugged one switch in and I've plugged the fan. If the switch is pressed down, the fan will come on. If it's lifted up, the fan will come off. You can set it in a variety of ways. There's a variety of switches that come with it, a variety of devices that work with the switches, and then the actual power select is coming with the sensory learning kit. Lots of different ways and lots of resources for you. There's also guidebooks that are available for the sensory learning kit. If you would like information, you are welcome to look at those. Those are available for you in a variety of ways. I'm going to share those results just so that you can see. There's a large portion of you that have some students or many students on your caseload. Okay. I'm moving on. I'm moving on to symbols and meaning. So symbols and meaning is the late sensory motor stage and early pre-operational stage. This is the onset of language, the beginning use of symbols, some pretending, but there is still lack of concrete knowledge. If you're following along with the worksheet, once meaning is established by pairing symbols and concrete reference, additional games give individuals the opportunity to use objects and word symbols in communication contexts. You want to pair near and distance sensory input while building these games. We'll talk more about it in a minute. Now, anyone may have access to the SAM, stands for symbols and meaning, videos. So there are videos available for you to already learn more about symbols and meaning. It also comes with a flash drive, and this flash drive has accessible files of common household and environmental sounds. It is sometimes difficult to get the right household or environmental sound in a classroom setting. So this gives you access and allows you to provide exposure to sounds that might at some point be scary to a student, and to learn to help them identify the sound and why the sound is there and what it comes from. There are many bags, boxes, and containers, and it seems really odd until you start putting all of this together. I'll explain more about that in a second. I need to explain a little bit about a schema to have some understanding. I put this on your worksheet. Schemas are defined as the patterns into which thoughts about related experiences become organized. So we organize our brain. To understand schemas, there is an order to ensure the learners with visual impairments have a breadth of experiences required for good concept and schema development. At that early pre-operational stage, the learner is developing schemas about the pattern of the relationship of people, objects, actions, and places in events. That knowledge is constructed over time by combining new information with past experiences. That's what you're helping do. Now, there are 4 levels of this construction. A student has to build knowledge of their own body before they can build anything about other concepts. The first 3 concept categories, people, objects, and actions, are next. And we're talking about people, objects, and actions that touch the body. And then we move to people, objects, and actions and places beyond the body. Note that places came next. Place is a unique category because it requires the knowledge of a cluster of things. A bathroom cannot be understood without an awareness of sink, tub, toilet, bar of soap, towel. And I was describing a bathroom in my home. Definitely different for a bathroom in a school. It is the cluster of objects that make a place a concept. So I want you to think of a place in the chat, name a place, and then list 4 objects that might be needed to evoke the concept of the place. While you're doing that, I'm going to describe Katie. Remember, she had a toilet tissue as her symbol of a place. This meant nothing to her. Katie never touched the toilet tissue, unless by accident. So we needed to think of something other than a toilet tissue to represent a bathroom because it made no sense. What other things did she explore in the bathroom? And think about it for a minute, because most of our students, we don't give them active time to explore the actual toilet. We should, but it's hard to do this frequently enough and safe enough. So think about those different things. So I've got people coming up with their bedrooms and objects, things that are for a kitchen, sink, stove, refrigerator, items to represent a car, seat, radio, seatbelt, windows. So think about those items. Those of you who are interested in what we ended up using for Katie, eventually for a symbol for her instead of a toilet tissue, was a set of small tile pieces, because she liked to run her hand on the wall of the tile over the little ridges and bumps. That meant way more to her than the toilet tissue for her. Now, the very last one is people, object, actions, places, relationships, and events beyond the body. So note, we need to build things with a student's body. The way this is done in SAM is with games. We're connecting objects and action words together. Katie had objects and actions that she blended together once we moved past into this stage. So, for example, when we went to the PE room, one of her favorite things to do was bounce on the large therapy ball. She would call it by name. We no longer needed to label the ball, but we wanted to talk about the action. So as she bounced on this ball, I would say bounce. There was another object in the PE room, which was a one-person trampoline. We worked on associating the action with a jump, working on tying these objects and actions together. A third one in their PE room was her beeper ball, and I'm sure all of you can guess what she liked with this one. She liked to throw it. So this ball was for throwing. We played it over and over again until we could pick the item and she could say the action. Or we could say an action and she could tell us which item it was and even demonstrate it, building these up. I talked about that sensory information. We have to help our students gather that sensory information. I want you to go back to that worksheet and go back to Piaget. He said, what we see changes what we know, and what we know changes what we see. Well, we need to help the seeing part. A learner with very limited vision must have different strategies for developing schemas. So I want you to examine the picture on the screen. I will describe it. A little girl sits. That was my sounds going out. I apologize. A little girl sits in a grassy area outside. Her head is turned to the left, and she might or might not be looking at something in the distance. Behind her are at least 6 yellow balloons tied to strings. A few balloons are bumping into her back and shoulder. This little girl might be using her distance sense of vision to see something, but she's also enjoying the sounds and smells of outside. These are the 3 distance senses for your worksheet: seeing, hearing, smelling. Now, what are the near senses she's experiencing? Can you tell me in the chat? What near senses is she experiencing? Touch. She is experiencing touch, right? The balloons are touching her. She might have her hand down on the grass next to her, maybe on a blanket. She's experiencing touch. So, which near sense are we missing now? We're missing taste. Taste. So I doubt she is tasting anything, but who knows? She might have tasted the grass or had a drink of water. Touch and taste are our near senses. So I've got a question. Learners with very limited vision must have different strategies for developing these schemas. In your practice, which 2 items do you pair most? Pick 2: seeing, touching, tasting, hearing, smelling, moving. In your practice, which 2 items do you practice most? Pair most, sorry, not practice most. Okay, I know you guys are thinking, I'm glad you're thinking, but I'm gonna end it just so that we can keep on moving. So it looks like the 2 that win the most are touching and hearing. Doesn't mean the others aren't used, but those are the ones that you identified first. Okay. we need to address the reliance we have on hearing because we need to assist with creating a tactual bridge between the near senses and the distance senses. How do you know where to start? SAM has assessments that are available actually to you right now. So you do have the availability of those assessments to help you out. Symbol and referent analysis of common words, symbol and referent analysis of academic vocabulary, environmental gap inventory for missing concepts in common environments, and curriculum-based gap inventory for early academic skills and basic concepts. But I want you to know that while you're thinking about this, you need to think about the over-reliance we do have with our students for hearing and thinking about those other senses that we can pair. So how do we help that? We help by creating and building word symbol bridges. Saying words while learners are exploring, using, and doing. Using real objects as much as possible and not replicas. And making sure these sensory bridges are in place, such as touching paired with the sounds of them, the sight of them, and the smells of them. Take a bus, for instance. A toy bus is not going to give you the rumble of the engine or the smell of the diesel. The real bus is what you need to pair. And the place matters. The student might get on the school bus at the end of their driveway and get off at a certain place in the school area. But talking about a bus in an unfamiliar place doesn't necessarily make sense. We want to build these things together. You want to use the word when the referent is heard or seen and smelled at a distance instead of right next to them. So we start building these together. We want to touch the object to discriminate the tactile characteristics in a natural context. There are pieces of a bus we rarely give our students access to. So making sure we spend the time to give them access to more than just the buckle and the seat. So form associations with other things related to the object as they are touched in the natural context, and use the object as a symbol in a communication context to call in mind all of that previous information and to help that message get sent or received. So think about a natural context if you're going to talk about a bathtub or the refrigerator. This helps build those word symbol bridges. And in a communication context, think about the SAM games. SAM talks about calendar boxes as well as experience stories. Another thing to think about, and SAM has great material to read about, is the way to use language while teaching, because there are two main categories of language when you teach. There's chatter, and then there's instruction. And when used intentionally, both are good. Chatter gives us social information, as well as language structure and kind of the patterns of language. Chatter is free flowing. It's often a stream of words, and it can contain everything from a comment to a question, even a command. There's usually no particular order, and often the topics change kind of randomly. Instruction, on the other hand, gives word meaning. It gives confidence and success. It is the process of consciously choosing words that convey a command or a comment, but not both. And they stay with one topic at hand. And many times these words are repeated and repeated in the same way each time. If you're following along with the worksheet, our comment phrases are spoken as the behaviors occur. Questions are used more frequently with learners with visual impairments. And some problems with this are the difficulty of questions for early language learners. It also promotes the use of question form by the learner when really another form of sentence structure would be more appropriate. We need to combat the use of questions with our students and actually work hard to provide comments and commands instead. So for example, instead of saying, "Can you hold the handrail to get on the bus?" Note the way my voice sounded, I was definitely asking something. And change it to, "Let's hold the handrail as we walk up the steps to get on the bus." Or simply, "Hold the handrail." Okay, I'm going to give you a swing at this. How would you rephrase what I'm going to tell you about? And then you'll type it in the chat. So let me describe the photo. Two little children are sitting on a round swing together. It's almost like a net swing. Their backs are to us. And it is a bright sunny day. They have hats on, short sleeves. You have a child with you that you want to encourage to socially join these two children on the swing. How would you rephrase, "Do you want to go on the swing?" How would you rephrase, "Do you want to go on the swing?" That's a question. I don't want a question. I'm seeing, "Let's join our friends on the swing. Let's swing. Let's go on the swing." Again, practicing it. And this is practicing with our adults that are with our students, sometimes more than us. So I'm going to, okay, briefly look at my time. I am going to drop things while I move them. Move items over. Show you a very beginning game. This is one of the baskets that comes with the kit. It is a basket that allows you to fold it down to the arms. One of the games in SAM is helping students identify the sounds of items. So I have 4 items in mind. One of them sounds like squeak. Another item sounds like rattle. Another one has pops. And then a ball for bounce. This is just a brief description of a game that you are taught using SAM to help your students start identifying sounds with objects. The bag itself helps identify to your student that this is a game they're going to play. So there's some anticipation of what there's an expectation of for what they're doing with this item. So there's a reason that there are different pieces together. That's just a very simple example of one. Another item is a story bag. The story bag I have has a dog collar attached to the outside, would be attached outside the bag, and we are going to tell a story about an activity we're going to do. As we reach into the bag, we talk together with our students, and eventually they would be able to reach into the bag and identify that there is a bowl for feeding a dog. There is a comb for combing the dog. There's a toy bone to play with the dog. And then there is a bag, which represents we're going to go for a walk with the dog. The dog can go to the bathroom. These are the items. This is the story we're going to tell. This is a story of a routine. We're building the routine. If a child enjoys working and playing with their dog at their house, again, This builds together this story. The student knows what's expected, and eventually the student is able to tell the story. They might not tell it with full sentences, but the objects have pulled together the pieces of the story for them to be able to share, building that communication. Again, you want more? Join us for SAM. It just gives you an idea of assessing their sensory responses, building these routines, and building those stable visual responses for those that have it. Now I'm going to move on. I'm moving on to the Tactile Connections Kit. This kit allows practitioners to create communication symbols for learners in the pre-operational stage of cognitive development, where the use of symbols is more extensive and complex. It allows teachers to create a tactile card system that is individualized for learners who are visually impaired or blind or have additional disabilities. Or it could be that they're just lacking the formal means of communication or literacy. If you're following along with the worksheet, there are 7 different colored cards for the possibility of 7 different categories. The book gives you information about examples of which you might want to put together, and the manual is available for free. We'll drop the link in for you. These items can be used the way it was designed, but there are many people who will take these category mounting cards and switch them up. There isn't a rule. Do let the learner and the learner's needs determine the collection and construction of meaningful symbols. Even the thought of using contracted or uncontracted braille labels, or the color selections, or the material used, all of this should be driven by your learner's needs, as well as your learner's preferences. I want you to note, a student at the whole object stage may not be at the stage ready for this kit. They may be at that pre-symbolic cognitive level, and therefore they're not ready for these tactile symbols. I implore you, go back and start with the sensory learning kit and SAM. Many people hop over symbols and meaning. They go right from the sensory learning kit over to something like tactile connection, some type of tactile symbol. And what they're really missing is that middle piece, helping that bridge between these two sections. If you're looking for the worksheet, the time needed to transition from whole objects to partial objects to symbols will vary greatly from child to child, requiring a couple weeks to a full year or more. Abstract words having a tactile symbol can be very difficult. But you have also the ability of adding braille and print to these cards to bridge, but there is not a requirement that you have that on there for the student. Sometimes you need it for the adult helpers. Tactile symbols are often created when a part of an object is mounted on these handheld sized cards and representing core vocabulary. You'll note the people, places, actions, objects thing here. And at the later stages of using this kit, students have the ability to read stories and use these symbols and might actually be able to use and move on to print and large print and braille. This kit works on building independence, and the effective use of tactile symbols could be to use a sequence strip so that they can actually transition from one step to another in activities or make decisions on what sequence they want to get ready in the morning. Maybe they want to apply deodorant before they brush their teeth or comb their hair after they get dressed instead of before. The user can read these steps from left to right, kind of moving through their routine with greater independence. You can go further and build experience stories. And because these tactile symbols become more meaningful and they are able to extend to a form of functional literacy. An emergent reader may choose to arrange tactile symbols to recount a personal experience or story. And while the text of these experience stories may be refined with the assistance of an adult or peer. The content and sequence of the story can be dictated by the learner's choice of tactile symbols. So your next one says sequencing is possible with the tactile connections cards when students reach the end of the pre-operational stage and get ready for the operational stage. For example, the symbols might be presented in a random arrangement on a carpet, square, or board, and then the individual is set to sequence them. So quickly, what experience have you had with communication symbols? I'm making this one fast. Just think about photos, colored drawings, black and white drawings, objects, pieces of objects, and representational objects. These are part of the symbols that we will come in contact with, especially when you're working with some of our speech language pathologists who might not have heavy knowledge of working with our students with visual impairments and might not really think about those pieces and symbols. Now, this continuum was developed to teach our individuals with visual impairments and other nonverbal communication issues. It's systematically built to increase in complexity. Remember that the structure matters. The structure in sensory learning kits, those activities called routines, encourage reactions and interactions, and they are typically familiar, low stress, predictable, consistent, and frequent. Remember, it was built for that sensory motor stage. The instructor should make use of this knowledge by building routines and patterns for the use of vocabulary, but verbal and in tactile symbols, focusing on bright colors, slow moving objects, limit objects, maybe only one or two objects, and truly it's repetition, 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 doing it over and over and over. Major focus of symbols and meaning is that early pre-operational cognitive stage, that onset of language, the use of symbols and pretending. We want to help our students move when we're using this kit, move to be more complex, but remember, use real objects, not pictures of objects with this group. We want to increase our cues instead of directly using their hands, but using a cue instead of moving their hand for them. We want to use simple but descriptive words and keep building those routines. And then those tactile connections, that target population for our late pre-operational through operational stage. This is allowing teachers to create those symbols. Remember to maintain contrast, and when building the communication board, gradually increase the number of cards and clutter. Consider framing the cards, not moving them and placing them in the position you're going to keep for the communication board. Think about lighting, because sometimes those cards end up becoming very dark. So you need increased lighting to encourage a student to see, touch the item. Now, I went through that rather quick. I'm curious how you did. Were you able to catch all the answers? Did you lose internet for a minute? Were you interrupted by a delivery? Or did you have to go work with a student? And some of you might. This is being recorded. You're welcome to join again on the recording. We are really glad you were able to come join us today. This was to whet your appetite. This is the communication continuum, talking about the sensory learning kit, symbols and meaning, and tactile connections. There is no way I could do justice to all three of these kits in just 1 hour. Not possible. Hopefully, I have enticed you to come join us when we discuss the sensory learning kit all by itself, symbols and meaning all by itself, and tactile connections. Thank you very much for joining us.
Fantastic. I think we are getting a lot of thank yous and that how much this was needed.
Can you hit stop for the recording, please?
Absolutely. We're gonna